Gordon, any sense of how much the people of Burma know about the reason they're in the plight they're in?
Especially in the last 3 or 4 days, we have seen reports that the Burmese are getting upset at their government because a little bit of information is indeed filtering through. There's a lot of self-help on the part of monks and others, and the government is actually trying to prevent some of these Burmese from helping their fellow citizens. So as this progresses, I think that we will see a loss of support for the government, because even as isolated as Burma is, people are starting to understand what is happening here, because news does filter in. And in a sense, I think we are going to see a change in at least the political calculus of many important segments of Burmese society, if not this week, if not next week, but certainly soon. This has got to change the country because of the magnitude of the suffering.
Alan Bork, what's your sense on this?
Well, I largely agree with Gordon. I'm just worried. I think this is so debilitating physically, this emergency. I think, and the disease that appears to be predicted stemming from any crisis, let alone one that's as badly managed as this, is very daunting. So, you know, I think this brings us to a discussion of at what point does the international community, have they had enough? I mean, it really is extraordinary. And I don't know what the answer is on Mr. Kushner's suggestion. I think it's interesting. It comes from I believe the founder of Médecins Sans Frontières. This is a doctor. He needs. I hope that he begins a round of diplomacy to discuss exactly this question and how people can help the Burmese people who may not be physically able and are so traumatized to actually change things at this point.
And Gordon, this has happened nearly at the same time that there's a devastating earthquake in China, and China, rather than closing in on itself in the face of that disaster, seems to have taken a different approach and perhaps opened up more than people would have expected.
Well, China's initial reaction was to open up. It allowed relatively freer reporting, both by domestic and foreign media. But we've seen in the last few days or so worrisome developments, because the government propaganda machine, which really had lost control of the media, has now tried to reassert itself, to dominate coverage. And also, you know, we saw the Chinese government at first refuse foreign assistance, which could have been crucial. It eventually let about 4 or 5 foreign teams into the country, but by then it was largely too late. So there have been improvements in the way China interacts with the world, but also, you know, it certainly has an approach which is not entirely satisfactory. You know, hopefully in the future, China's reaction will become even better, but this is not an entirely good story that we're witnessing.
Ellen Bork, your sense?
Yeah, I think Gordon's right to focus on the loss of control, that this China knows that its citizens have cell phones and so on, and this kind of globalized community that they're somewhat a part of is a real factor in the way China responds. But I think it is a question of loss of control. They did issue the typical media directives with Communist Party, you know, communist sort of dicta about the disaster. And what we really saw was people ignoring those. And that, I think, is the phenomenon that we should be focusing on.
Gordon, we just have a few seconds left, but is it that sense of loss of control that may be driving the Burmese regime to be closed in?
Well, I think that they see what's happening in China, and they don't like that, and they think that the best way to hold on is to constantly exercise repression. And they see that the Chinese government is being pushed around by its people, and certainly that's the last thing that the junta will tolerate.
I'm afraid that's going to have to be the last word. We're out of time. But I'd like to thank my guests, Ellen Bork, Senior Program Manager for Human Rights at Freedom House, and joining us by phone from Bedminster, New Jersey, Gordon Chang, journalist and author of books on China and North Korea, and also the First Lady, Laura Bush. Before we go, I'd like to invite you to send us your questions or comments. You can reach us through our website at www.voanews.com/ontheline. For On the Line, I'm Eric Felten.